It is Red River Shootout week, one of the truly great games in college football. Texas, a small favorite here at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. Potentially this game is the Longhorns' entire season. They come in with 2 losses. We'll talk about best bets for this game. We'll talk about John Mateer. We'll talk about Arch Manning. And we'll talk about the key matchups in this football game. Welcome to the channel. I am Ninja. She is Josie Costigan, 2-0 last week with her picks in that Miami-Florida State game. Absolutely dominant with her college football picks this season, especially in these preview videos. I want to briefly talk a little bit about Indiana, Oregon as well at the bottom of this video, because all of a sudden, Josie, that game is a huge one and has Heisman implications as well. Okay, Josie, truly a game where a key player, in this case, Oklahoma quarterback John Mateer, looks to be a game-time decision. Has the hand injury, but he may indeed start. And of course, if he goes, how healthy does he look? It could be Hawkins, who was okay, I guess, against Kent State. But Josie, how do we handicap this one with the uncertainty around that Oklahoma quarterback spot?
This game is easy because I think even with Mateer's status up in the air, I'm confident in Oklahoma as dogs here. For me, I think their defense travels. They're the second best in the nation. And I think they can handle whatever Texas throws at them because I don't even think Texas knows what they're going to throw at them. So grabbing that at plus 2.5 like I did yesterday, getting that early if Mateer does end up playing is a huge bonus. And I feel like the way they've been hinting at his return maybe makes me feel like it's likely. I feel like they wouldn't be teasing it in such a storied rivalry if there wasn't, a decent chance he's on the field. So getting that line now is smart. I think Oklahoma can cover it regardless, and that only gets better if Mateer does suit up.
So Texas comes in off the loss against Florida, another, not great game from Arch Manning, who I do want to talk about in a moment. But considering, Josie, the incredibly lofty expectations this Texas team had coming into this season from the media, from the fans, from Arch Manning himself, what have we learned about Texas through 5 games and coming into their biggest game?
First of all, how stupid was that game last week? Florida was the mock of college football, and then Texas rolls in. Now it's you guys are the joke. Congratulations. But anyways, I feel like we're also trying to figure out the whiplash we've been experiencing with this Texas team so far. We learned that their defense is pretty good, but it can be exposed, obviously, like we saw against Florida. Arch Manning is just a real concern, unless you're Sam Houston State, of course. Watch out for him then. But from a betting perspective, it's hard to trust a team that's covered once. I think their peaks are high, but their valleys are really, really low. And it's been very clear that as the schedule ramps up and, they face teams that are known competitors in this sport, that they really can't hang.
You talked about the Texas defense, and I do want to get to that as well here momentarily. But assess Arch Manning for me. Do you see any signs of a glimmer of hope from this guy? We had the 3 games in between where he padded the stats, but in the spot, against the Ohio States, against Florida, he can't get it done. Do you see hope for this season from Arch Manning, or is he just an all-time bust?
Yeah, my opinion has varied, I feel week after week after week. I'll start by saying this. I'm just as guilty. I think we may have placed too much hype on this kid. And he clearly doesn't have the ice in his veins to live up to that standard like his uncles. If your best performances are going to be against San Jose State, UTEP, Sam Houston State, then we've got a problem. I think it also could be a team issue, maybe. I think the O-line has left him exposed. That's no excuse for him. But 9 sacks, 5 interceptions. He's facing a lot of pressure. I also think maybe Sarkisian got caught up in the hype and fed him more than he could handle, or just isn't showcasing his strengths, or I don't know. But that said, I think maybe this is the kind of humbling he needs to reach that next level. So I can see him just absolutely shitting the bed all season, taking the offseason to go, what the heck just happened? And maybe coming back stronger.
Great call out, because I was going to follow up. Maybe it's a Sark issue, and I'll put my hand up as well. I bought into the hype going into that Ohio State game as well. I was all in. But one thing we do know for sure is that the defenses here are going to be legit. So does this game look like it all comes down to that elite Oklahoma rushing defense against that elite Texas defense against the pass? Is that going to be what potentially defines this game?
I think it could, but here's my reservation with that. Oklahoma's rushing defense is so dominant, and it forces Texas to then rely on Arch Manning's arm. And as we just talked about, can we really rely on Arch Manning's arm? Obviously, Manning and his O-line are coming off like a bad performance, picked off twice in the fourth quarter, sacked six times. So even if you have those defensive strengths, it really means nothing if your offense isn't capitalizing off it. They just allowed Texas defense just allowed DJ Lagway nearly 300 yards. That was a guy who was coming off a 61-yard performance versus Miami, and he was sacked 4 times. So I think that kind of shows you how inflated these stats kind of are.
All right, Josie, I talked about a 2-0 last week. Miami spread, the Malachi Toney anytime touchdown. I have an indication of where you're going with your pick here, so it feels like a formality. But what do you got in this game?
Yeah, I am going Oklahoma plus 2.5, which is what I got it at yesterday. Again, I think their defense is legit. I think Arch Manning's all over the place. Even last week, I bet on Texas money line because I didn't trust him with a spread against Florida, and they still bit me in the ass. I think the O-line can't protect him. And again, that game against the Gators exposed a lot for me. Even if Hawkins starts, like you said, the Sooners move the ball pretty well against Kent State anyways. If Mateer ends up playing, I think that's a huge bonus, especially in a rivalry game like this. Texas has only covered once this season. Again, a lot of their stats are padded. So this feels like a perfect spot for Oklahoma to honestly win outright. I don't even know why they're dogs in the first place.
And even if it is Hawkins, like it only feels like he needs to generate 20, 21 points in this game to potentially get the win.
Yeah.
But I digress. I save the expert picks for you because you've been on an absolute tear. But I would be remiss if we didn't at least talk about Indiana, Oregon, number 7, Indiana visiting number 3, Oregon. Ducks minus 7.5 at home here, total of 55.5. And I do want to talk about that number momentarily, but it's a Heisman matchup here, Josie. Dante Moore plus 500 on top of the Heisman odds board. Fernando Mendoza, 5th at plus 1,400. This over at DraftKings. What do you make of the subplot here in this game at the QB position?
I gotta be so honest. I didn't know who this Mendoza kid was 3 weeks ago. You really asked me. But yeah, it's a Heisman showdown all of a sudden. And these two quarterbacks are kind of putting up identical numbers, each over 1,200 passing yards more with 14 touchdowns. Mendoza was 16. Both can make plays with their legs. Both lead, high-powered, top 10 offenses. That said, I think Oregon's overtime win against Penn State in a whiteout environment, that just edges in terms of resume and big-time performances, which makes slightly more appealing from a betting perspective. But yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
So let's finish the video with that spread here, the 7.5 points. And if you have a pick for this one, you can transition right into that. But I'm curious about the number here. Ducks by 7.5 at home against Indiana. Is that a fair number, or is this Oregon all day for you?
It is kind of Oregon all day for me. 7.5. I think it's teams are, they're both explosive. I think their offenses are neck and neck in stats wise. But for me, Oregon does have that slight edge with a tougher schedule. And, again, that overtime win against Penn State. From a betting angle, Oregon is only 3-1-1 against the spread, but 4 and 5 those have been by 27 points or more. So I think that doesn't really reflect it, honestly. Meanwhile, Indiana's last 2 games had them favored by 9 points or less. They went 1-1 in that span. So I just think all that makes 7.5 points like a reasonable cushion for the Ducks. I just think that Penn State win has them gives them a little more bragging rights here. And then my pick for this one, because I went 2-0 again last week and I'm feeling a little cocky, I want to have some fun. So I'm leaning more over 2.5 touchdowns at plus 148. I think he's been really hot lately. 4 against Oregon State, 3 against Penn State. And yeah, he's facing a Hoosier defense that's solid, but I said the same thing about Penn State's defense 2 weeks ago. So I think he wants to keep that Heisman talk going.